Hello everyone! Today we are going to do a reaction video and I'm going to react to a language learning video because this is a language learning channel, obviously. The video is called Learning a New Language is Easy Actually, and it's from a channel called Easy Actually, which doesn't have that many videos, but it kind of blew up. So if you've seen this video before, I wouldn't be surprised, I guess. If you haven't, then I guess we'll discover it together.
Learning a language is actually very easy. You start off by watching this video right here. Then you stare at this screen. Then you pick a language you have no business learning. Do one lesson, forget about it. Then search up videos about how to learn that language in 6 weeks. Made by a YouTuber who learned it in 6 years.
I hope this video is not real. I mean, I know it's obviously, I know he drew it or something, but I do hope there aren't people that make that kind of content because that'd be ridiculous.
You have to make sure you're not doing it for the wrong reasons. Sure, if you learned a hard enough language, it would probably impress a lot of strangers, and it would probably get you a lot of views on YouTube. Subscribers too. I think some people even make money from it.
Obviously, he's referring to something we're all aware of. It's YouTubers that make very clickbaity content. And I kind of have two sort of points of views, I guess, about this, which is one, obviously YouTube is about clicking and clickbaiting because, you know, if you want your channel to thrive, you have to kind of make clickbait content. I don't do it as much because I'm not very comfortable with it. I feel like I should because that means maybe my channel would have more views, but I don't know, I'm not too comfortable with it, but I kind of understand why people do it. But there's a way of making clickbait that's not too much and that's not actual lying. Obviously, you know, you have to be aware of the fact that a lot of content creators, regardless of the niche, there's going to be some level of clickbait, which is kind of necessary to get views essentially, which is the point of making videos at the end of the day. But the main thing I would say is try not to fall for having very high expectations of yourself, like, you know, learning a language in a year or something, because that, I'm not saying that's impossible really, but it's not realistic, which is two different things. It's possible in the sense that, yes, if you study 50 hours a week, you can do it, but it's not reasonable and realistic because most people don't have that kind of time.
But if you're a beginner, you should really be picking a language that's easy enough for you to actually enjoy learning it. You shouldn't pick a language if you're going to treat it like a chore. So, to maximize your chances of success, here's a chart of some popular languages ranked by how much time it takes for an English speaker to learn them. If you're not sure what language you should start learning, I would just pick either Spanish, French, or Portuguese. Not only are they the easiest for English speakers, but many countries speak one of these as an official language.
I mean, I agree with the idea that, you know, it can be useful to learn a language based on the number of speakers because that will kind of open doors in terms of communication, especially as an English native speaker. But at the same time, I kind of don't like this thought process of saying, you know, choose a language that's useful, you know, because that's a very loaded idea. You know, it's not very neutral. It's kind of biased. So I don't know. I don't quite like that.
However, if you do want to go for a harder language, it is possible.
Just to clarify, there are going to be languages that, of course, are going to be harder for you to learn depending on your native language, you know. For example, learning English for a French speaker is not the same thing as a Japanese person learning English, obviously. But yeah, I don't quite like the idea that you learn something easy. I would say just learn something you're passionate about, but I don't know, maybe he's going to talk about this later on in the video.
Just remember to ask yourself, do I really have the right motivation? For example, wanting to understand anime is not going to motivate you to learn Japanese for more than a day. However, my friends speak Spanish and I want to understand them is a pretty good motivator.
That's subjective because for some people, I think, you know, learning Japanese or any other language, of course, but learning Japanese for anime can be just like a foot in the door, I guess, of language learning. And then maybe can translate to them wanting to learn Japanese for other reasons, you know, the culture, some form of art, I don't know, whatever. So I wouldn't dismiss it like that. Although I do think, but that's because that's the way I get motivated with languages. You know, learning a language to learn to speak to people is kind of like very motivating for me, but I wouldn't generalize, I think.
Some people have to take a language class for school, but that by itself is not a great motivator because your finger might slip and you might accidentally paste all your assignments into deep L. However, the British invaded my country and I need English to survive is the perfect motivation to start learning English, and so far it seems to have been a huge success. So now that you've picked your language, it's time for the easy part, which is learning it. Usually, people on the internet will tell you that the fastest method to learn any language is to get a language partner, or a tutor, or a friend who's willing to sit down with you and talk to you like a baby until you start picking up words and sentences. And while this is probably the fastest way, it requires human interaction. So instead, here's a method that you can do all by yourself, at home, to become fluent in a language.
Okay, the thing that I like a lot is that you mentioned communication, and I think that's quite important. So let's see where it goes with this.
First step is learning the basics. This is actually a very easy step, but many people try to skip it by doing 1 or 2 Duolingo lessons. Other people get stuck on the language learning side of YouTube, watching 138 videos about how to learn Korean, none of which include a single word of Korean. But the whole time, all you really had to do was find a beginner textbook for that language that has practice exercises for you to do. It might take you a month to finish the whole thing, but the progress you'll make is equal to about 2 years of Duolingo, or about 12 years of school in America.
Obviously, there's a bit of a joke there. I do like textbooks, so I can't really, disagree with this. I think it's a great way to get started. Now, I wouldn't say learn a language solely through textbooks, but at least to get started, I think that's great.
And you can find these books for free just by Googling beginner, then the language, textbook PDF. And there you go.
I don't like the idea of getting resources for free when you're normally supposed to pay for them. I understand, money can be an issue in some cases, but I wouldn't go as far as promoting it in a video, but
You could also just get them from the library, or as they say in France, the library. The library. Isn't the library fun to say? Imagine if you Googled it. Once you finish the beginner book, it's time to practice listening. You don't even have to worry about speaking right now, because first, you need to learn what the language is actually supposed to sound like. The easiest way to do this is by watching YouTube videos in that language.
The extracted shows in the video is so random, like, what? I mean, useful vocab, I guess, but I don't know, I think it was on purpose.
The idea behind this is that you're not going to understand everything, but by looking at the video and using context clues from what you do understand, you can slowly pick up the language without even realizing. This works especially well because every language only has a few thousand words that are actually used in regular conversation.
Actually, the number of words in the language, I don't know where you got that source from, but there's no official data or source, I guess, to say that there's this many amount of words in English. But I digress.
You'll start recognizing the same few words and phrases in every video you watch. And you can really pick anything to watch, as long as it's interesting and you can understand at least 30% of it. If you put on a video and it sounds like gibberish, it's not your fault. They're just talking too fast. This is probably because they're trying to gatekeep their language. Do not let them do this. To fix it, just go to the YouTube search bar and add the magic word easy. And just like that, you get served up a bunch of videos that you can understand. Automatic captions also help a lot, because you can rewind and look up the words you don't know. There are even websites like Reverso Context, where you can look up a word or phrase and actually see it used in a real sentence. But whatever you do, do not turn on English subtitles. Many people who try to learn Japanese, for example, watch anime. This is not a bad way to learn Japanese, but people who turn on English subtitles will just read the subtitles. And even though they think they're learning Japanese, in 5 years, all they'll have to show for it is this profile picture and the Discord Nitro subscription.
That's pretty funny. I don't know if he's gonna carry on his point later on, but as much as you shouldn't stick to English subtitles or your native language, whichever it is, it's kind of easy to say, There's a few steps that you have to go through before you just put on native subtitles.
But luckily, you've been using subtitles in the right language, and you can now understand at least 70% of everything you watch. It's time to unleash step 3, which is speaking. To start speaking, just keep watching YouTube, except now, you pause after each important sentence and repeat it out loud, or at least whisper it. Try to pretend like you're having a real conversation with an actual person, and even think of different possible situations where you could use the sentence. Whenever you find a sentence that sounds really useful, write it down in a notebook. You're probably never going to look at that notebook ever again, but it's nice to get some writing practice. Now, at any point in this entire process, once you feel ready to start speaking, sit down and record yourself talking to a camera, and just talk about your day, stuff you did, stuff you're looking forward to, and even ask a couple questions to the imaginary person on the other side.
I like this exercise of practicing speaking, and by the way, you don't have to record, the video. That's a detail, but I know some people are camera shy, but just recording yourself on the phone as well is pretty good. The idea is to be able to listen to yourself again, maybe listen to your accent, see where you can improve. Maybe, possibly, if you're listening to like a text, for example, that's, let's say in French, then you can record yourself, then listen to it and compare the two. That can be pretty good, I think.
If you ever forget how to say something, fill it in with English and move on. Later, you can watch the recording back and look up whatever you didn't know how to say using deep L or reversal context.
Using your native language while practicing another language, I'm not sure about that. I'm not saying it's bad at the beginning, but I wouldn't make a habit out of it, because what I teach my students all the time is, yes, of course, you're not always going to know, all the words you need to express yourself, especially at the beginner and intermediate stage, even advanced, but you know what I mean. But it's better to kind of get used to rephrasing things rather than using another language if your goal is to master your target language. I'm not against code switching, by the way, but you know what I mean. I think you know what I mean.
This might look like a lonely way to learn a language, but if you've ever heard someone say they're self-taught, this is exactly what they were doing. And that's all there is to it. If you keep reading about the language, watching YouTube, and talking to a camera for long enough, you'll become fluent without ever having to talk to an actual person. Congratulations.
There's definitely a few people that are like, I learn a language, but not to speak to people because they're scared, nervous, whatever. And I'm not invalidating any of this. You do you. It's none of my business, really. But what I would say is a bit contradictory, because if you feel like language is meant for communication and then you learn the language but without communicating, I don't know, that sounds a bit contradictory. I don't know.
But one day in the future, you'll probably have to travel, and you'll eventually have to talk to native speakers. And all you have to do is just learn the culture and keep up with the politics.
Just learn the culture and keep up with the politics.
This is what you might expect to see, but what you'll actually see is hundreds of French farmers driving their tractors into the capital to form a blockade. If you stop a Frenchman on the street to ask what happened, he'll just tell you that this is a normal day in France. French people use creative protest as a way to pass the time,
Fair.
And you clearly must have not read about it using ground news. #sponsored.
Alright, so we are done with the reaction. That was an interesting video. What would I say? What would be my final thoughts? So most of it was actually not bad advice, especially for beginners. Obviously, you can't include all the possible steps there is to learning a language in an 8-minute video. Well, 6, because there was an ad at the end. But it was pretty solid, pretty funny. I don't know, I feel like that was actually well edited. I like the style, but except for the couple of things I felt like needed a bit of nuance, I thought that was a pretty good video. So yeah, is there anything you would like to add to what I said? Maybe points you thought I could have maybe developed more, or I don't know. What's your opinion? Alright, I will see you in a future video, and don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and share it with your friends. Why not? Alright, I'll see you later. Bye bye.